Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Marvel Heroes? Brought to you by Gazillion. These are the guys with Dave Brevik involved in them. You should know Dave Brevik. He was very much involved in the original Diablo titles. Also got into a little bit of a scuffle, if you recall correctly, with a certain Blizzard employee whose name we shall not mention, lest we summon him from the depths of hell itself. Yeah, it was pretty ugly. One way or the other, Gazillion actually got given a pretty exclusive license for a significant amount of time to develop a bunch of Marvel stuff. This is the title which used to be Marvel Universe, supposedly an MMO. It's now more of a Diablo clone. Pretty similar to those kind of games with similar kind of mechanics. It does have some MMO elements to it, but I definitely wouldn't call it a true MMO by any stretch of the imagination. So, before we go on, let's look at the options menu, then we'll talk about the business model, then we'll talk about the game itself. To the options menu we go. Where do we stop? Nobody knows. Well, first things first, there are 5 presets and that's about it. There are no advanced graphical options of any description. Unfortunately, this severely hurts the game, in my honest opinion, considering the performance of the game is not actually that good. There have been some improvements since I started playing the game, but there are many occasions, especially in more open zones with more players, where the frame rate will tank significantly, even on my machine. I cannot imagine how bad it would be for others. I've actually had several reports from various people on Twitter saying, yeah, my friends can't play this because their computers apparently aren't good enough to run it at an acceptable frame rate. Now, this is hardly next-gen in terms of its graphical fidelity, so that's a little bit stupid. What it does have, which I do like, is the VFX obscurement level slider. Now, what this does is it reduces other players' visual effects on the screen. Pretty important, as far as I'm concerned. Considering there's a lot of visual spam in this game, so it's good to be able to move that down. Key rebinding is available, and you have a fairly lackluster selection of gameplay options there. There's nothing like loot filtering or anything like that. That stuff simply isn't there. So I'm not too impressed with that. And then you've got the separate audio sliders, which is always nice to have. So pretty lackluster on the options side of things. Okay, so what's it all about? As I mentioned, it is very much a free-to-play Diablo-like game. This is the first of 3 hub areas, and these hub areas will allow you to warp to various levels. The levels are not actually interconnected in any kind of world. They are just zones, yeah? And you teleport to the zones, and that really is about it. That's how it works. These hub areas are used for crafting, also finding various vendors. The problem, of course, with the vendors is that you actually have to level the vendors up in order to get them anything useful. How do you do that? Donate them a ton of items. Alright, let's donate a few items, shall we? If I recall correctly, yeah, it's Alt and right-click to do that. So, donate, donate, donate. You'll slowly, very slowly see this slider here increase. Yeah. Which is not so great. If you donate them more valuable items, like greens and blues and so on and so forth, then you will have a better time of it. So as you can see, it jumps up there. So I donated an epic item, and that got me maybe 1/20th of the way there. Not too good. That's only rank 2. I can't imagine how many items you would have to absolutely throw at this guy in order to get anything relevant. And what's worse, I might add, is that there doesn't appear to be any way to actually increase the storage on your character. You have 40 storage slots, and that's about it. So it's actually very easy to, in the middle of a dungeon, run out of storage space. Now, I would think that there would be something like a town portal or anything like that, but there isn't. Not from what I can tell at any rate. You can't just portal back, sell your stuff, and then get back into it. There's nothing like the pets either from Torchlight 2. So it becomes incredibly irritating to deal with a huge amount of inventory management nonsense and have to, like, repeatedly throw items away when you find better ones. It sucks. It really, really does. And with no loot filter, it's even more of a challenge to actually pick up relevant things. So I don't know what the hell they were thinking there. Okay, I'm going to port to a zone, and then I'm going to talk about business model, and we'll show you the combat as well. Business model is probably the most controversial thing about this title, aside from the loading times, which are actually quite significant. As you're well aware, I run all my games on SSDs, so the loading time for your regular hard drive would be significantly more than that. A lot of people have complained about loading times upwards of a minute when you're zoning into different areas, which happens pretty often. The game is by no means seamless, so that's something to bear in mind. So, welcome to one of the zones. Welcome also to the Invincible Fruit Stand. Ah, tasty ice cream pops, which refuses to die. Wow. Man, the enemy should make all that armor out of the ice cream pop stand. They'd have a hell of a lot more luck. Okay, so business model. Let's have a look at it. This is the store. It's a free-to-play game. You start with 5 characters, or at least the choice of 5 characters. Those 5 characters, if I recall correctly, are Daredevil, Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye. You also get Storm and one other character whose name escapes me. Can't really remember which. I don't think it's Black Widow, although it could be. One way or the other, you get the choice of 5, and then after you've beaten the tutorial area, you can choose one more, and at the end of the story, you can choose a third, but only from that selection of 5 characters. Everything else costs in-game, well, not in-game currency, they're fun bucks, basically. They're the so-called Gs. How much do Gs cost? I can show you. So, on average, 1,000 Gs will cost you $10. If you buy $100 worth of currency, yeah, that's a fairly significant amount. Sometimes this loads, sometimes it doesn't. My apologies. Thankfully, I can remember the pricing. You get one, there you go, 11,500. So you get a bit of a bonus there, but everything else, it's like 1,000 Gs is $10. So you can do a pretty easy conversion here. How much do these guys cost? Well, Captain America will cost you $12. Deadpool will cost you $20. Wolverine costs you $12. Thor, $12, Spider-Man, $20, Iron Man, $20. So what they've done here is they've actually priced the more popular heroes at a higher price point. Like, you're basically being asked to pay $20 for your favorite hero, which is bollocks, I might add. That is incredibly exploitative as far as I'm concerned. The reason I say this is because this game is not so much fan service as it is trying to get as much money out of fans of the franchise as possible. So what do? They took the most popular heroes and jacked the price up. They also have rather expensive costumes. Let's have a look at Daredevil. These are okay. Or are they? This is an $11 costume. Like, it costs almost twice as much as the hero itself. That is a $14 costume. It's just red and black. Why is this so expensive? If we have a look at Deadpool, that's a $20 costume. That guy at least has some different voice acting, but they're so expensive. It's actually ridiculous. Really, really crazy. And you can't even buy, like, components for them either, because the way that the game is set up, this is your costume. Like, if I remove all of my stuff, which I can't do with right-clicking, okay. Let's just drag all my armor off. There we go. Looks exactly the same. Yeah. So, that actually does not change your appearance in any way, shape, or form. The only thing you can do to change your appearance is add some, like, glows and particle effects in the crafting system, or buying another costume. Apparently, costumes are also extremely rare drops, as are heroes. However, let's think about this logically, shall we? Yeah? I want to try and kind of provide both sides of the argument. Is it reasonable to charge $20 for a new class, because that's what heroes are, a new class in a free-to-play game? Now, the 5 things that you do get, those 5 heroes, are in fact different archetypes, yeah? And as a direct result, you could say, oh, right, well, at least it offers me a range controller, it offers me a tank, it offers me a melee dude. It's like, yeah, okay, cool, I get that. However, the classes are distinct. So, you know, Iron Man versus, say, Hawkeye, you know, they would play very, very much differently. Now, there's a couple of problems that I've got with the system. One, of course, is the obviously exploitative nature of saying, oh, you want to play your favorite guy? We're going to make sure you pay more for that, yeah? Now, yes, it is a free game. So, asking someone to pay $20 for a class in a free game, not necessarily unreasonable. Because you're saying, alright, well, let's not treat it as a free-to-play game. Let's treat it as a premium game, whereby I paid $20 for the privilege. The thing is, paying $20 doesn't give you access to all of the characters. Paying $60 didn't give you access. And if you wanted all the characters, the Founders Pack was over $200. $200! It's a massive amount of money, when you think about it. Huge amount for what is basically a Diablo clone with Marvel characters in it. I can think of a few other games that were quite similar to that. X-Men. You remember those 2 X-Men games? X-Men Legends 1 and 2. Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. Amazing games. We won't think about X-Men Destiny. That, as far as I'm concerned, never happened. But those were games where you could just play pretty much any of the characters, and you play through the story, and you got upgrades and things like that, and it was fun. Yeah, you know, those were actually really, really good games. As far as I'm concerned, at any rate. That's not too bad. I'm going to grab that. And it really gets to me that instead of having a game like that, we ended up with a game like this. Now, one of the real problems with it is not simply that it costs so much, it's the fact that you can't try the characters out before you play them. If I'd known that Iron Man was as boring as this, I would not have picked Iron Man. I was given the currency by the developers to actually check this out, and that does not mean I give you a good review, by the way. If you think, one, that I do reviews, and two, that I would even consider virtual currency to be a payoff, then of course you're out of your mind. But, you know, it allowed me to try out some of the different heroes, and I discovered that Iron Man is incredibly dull. I mean, his primary attack is this, standing and just kind of waving your hands and little pulse bolts come out. I mean, for God's sake. It's like this guy's trying to play Kinect. Like, woo, I gotta wave my hands and things are gonna happen. This is not a fun way to play Iron Man. This is not how I see Iron Man envisioned in other titles. Admittedly, Iron Man's had a pretty bad time in that respect, but hell, you know, if I wanted to play Iron Man, I'd play Iron Man Exo Manowar. You know, that was a damn Iron Man game. But, of course, the recent games that Iron Man has had have been pretty abysmal, but they managed to make Iron Man incredibly boring. And it's just by this extremely dull Diablo-style ranged combat. Now, there are games whereby the ranged combat in a Diablo-style game works pretty well. Torchlight is a prime example of that, but this is certainly not it. If I'd been able to try this hero out prior to that, then I would have picked somebody else. It's really as simple as that. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with it. I don't feel that you can justify charging $20 for a class when you have no way to try that class out. That, I think, is absolutely unacceptable in every possible respect. Alright, so business model-wise, definitely not a fan of it. Yeah? I don't think it's a fair business model. I don't think it's a well-thought-out business model. The other stuff in the shop, I mean, I can kind of live with it. Things like costumes, whatever, not important. Cosmetic stuff, charge whatever you want for it. Stuff like this $15 pet. Again, I don't care. Do whatever you want with this kind of stuff. Not a big deal. Fortune cards for $1 each, yeah, which give you various things. I mean, let's buy a couple of fortune cards just to see what we get. Always nice to do this on the video, I tend to find. Let's buy 3 fortune cards, and then we'll see what it actually gives us. Most of the time, I just randomly leveled up from that, okay. Most of the time, it gives you stuff that's actually valuable. That's an artifact. That's actually pretty rare, I think. Let's equip it. Sweet, it gives me an annoying blue particle effect. There we go. Sweet. Well, that was quite good. Experience boost, and another experience boost. And it seems like they kind of stack. The funny thing about these experience boosts, by the way, is while they seem initially reasonable, they're really not. The experience boost is $1.50, but it's for an hour, and they stack. So if you want a full experience boost, you have to buy 5 of these. So, it's like, what? 5? So, $7.50 an hour to get a full 100% experience boost. I mean, that's absurd. Like, compare it to any other game that provides that kind of system, and it is just ridiculous. Really, really is. So, I mean, pricing-wise, I don't think this game is a particularly good value proposition whatsoever. However, if you happen to like the initial 5 starting heroes, let's say you really like Daredevil, I guess somebody has to, and you get to play Daredevil as you start a hero, and you actually like the way that he plays, and then everything's cool, everything's smooth. But that's the weird randomness of the game, isn't it? It's like, maybe those heroes are the ones you want to play, or maybe they're not, yeah? And most likely they aren't. Yeah? The more popular heroes cost an awful lot more money. Now, you can say, well, you can get random drops, but there's been varying degrees of success when it comes to that kind of thing. I've heard people say, yeah, I managed to get 3 heroes, and then I've heard other people say, yeah, I played for 60 hours and I haven't got a single hero yet. Or they get a hero that they already have, or some nonsense like that. Random drop is not a good way to do that, not at all. There should be an in-game way of unlocking those heroes that doesn't involve random chance, and there isn't. So that's a big weakness. Okay, let's talk about the combat itself. Now, I was talking about the idea that this is Diablo style, and I think, you know, it could just be that this particular hero is, quite frankly, not enjoyable to play. But it's also the only hero that I've really leveled up to a reasonable degree. So I can change my hero. I think I can even do it in the middle of combat. Let's change to Wolverine. No, let's not change to Wolverine. Okay, let's try again. Okay, I can't do it in the middle of combat when I'm taking hits. Okay, so I'll just dispatch these guys and I'll change over to Wolverine. The problem with changing to Wolverine in the middle of a level is that these guys are like level 12 and I have a level 1 Wolverine, which indicates to me that this guy is going to die very, very fast. I like the changeover, the fact that the guy flies off and things like that. That's pretty cool, but I don't have any... I mean, what am I going to use, exactly? I could equip this medal. Actually, I can't because you need to be level 4, so I can't really equip anything. And I can run around as Wolverine, and what's going to end up happening to me when I actually encounter a bunch of enemies? Chances are, I'm going to get absolutely and completely shredded. So it's a nice option, but you have to individually level the characters up. I think what would actually be cool is if you bought a character, you actually had the character say... Good lord, it takes like forever to kill this guy. If you actually had the character at least retain some of the experience. Maybe not get it all. Maybe not get it all, but retain some of it. I think that, as far as I'm concerned, would be a pretty good way of doing things. As it stands, however, they didn't do that. So, if you want to switch out your character, you're pretty much going to have to start the whole bloody thing again. Alright. Okay, let's grab that. Put that on there. Try and do a little bit of fighting. Thankfully, I've got more experience boosts than God at this stage, so it's not too difficult for me to actually level this guy up, but I think they would have been able to soften the blow significantly when it came to having to spend a metric ton of money on characters if they actually allowed you to convert in that way. Alright. Wow, I've killed 2 enemies and leveled up twice, so that's always nice. Oh, man. Alright, there we go. Combat-wise... It pretty much is about as generic as you get, and I think the melee characters are significantly more enjoyable, but that also shows... It kind of shows a weakness of the genre itself, saying, oh yeah, you know, these genres are just... They're not that good for ranged characters or casters or anything like that. It's more fun to play as a melee character, but I don't think that's really true. I think you can do it a lot better. Oh man, it's because I got so many experience boosts. I think I'm at like 400% XP at this stage. I think you can do it a lot better, and there are plenty of games where ranged characters are actually fun. But as it stands, it's just super generic in every possible respect. It's like, oh yeah, slash, 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 slash. Hold down the left mouse button, occasionally hit an ability, and that really is about it. And I'm going to die here, because evidently I'm being completely out-leveled. I don't know, maybe I do, maybe I don't. We'll see. My regen's pretty good. I don't know if it's good enough. Maybe if I spam healing kits, I can actually get out of this. Or maybe not. Ooh, it's alright, I've got backup. Cool. Level 3, like, fighting a bunch of level 12s. Yeah, that'll go well. I mean, even the melee combat in this game, unless you're playing, like, a big, stompy character, is not that fun. Wolverine's one of my favorite Marvel characters of all time, right? And I have seen Wolverine in many games actually be a really enjoyable character to play. In this case, however... It is just really, really boring. It's a lot of very repetitive, very light animations that don't really have an awful lot of follow-through. And yes, you can speed around the place with the dash and so on and so forth, but you spend more time kind of repositioning your character to actually get some strikes in than going from opponent to opponent, slashing them to pieces. And that seems to be a similar situation to... with every character, really. I think the only exceptions are the big guys. Guys like Hulk, the guys like The Thing, they do have a significant amount of impact to their attacks, and they're very superhero-like, but a lot of this stuff really, really isn't. There is some environmental destruction, but there's not really an awful lot of it. And that, I think, is very much a key weakness. If you had a lot of environmental destruction, then you'd probably have a more heroic and more dynamic and visceral feeling combat, but they don't. And the combat is about as repetitive as you get, and so are the enemies as well. For the last, like, 3 zones, I've been fighting punks, and mafioso. Yeah? There haven't been all that many super-powered enemies aside from the bosses, and unfortunately, the bosses aren't all that good either. That's the main issue with it. I do actually have anything that I can wear that's an upgrade. Yeah, I can wear that, I can wear that. Everything else is items for Iron Man. And you know what's really bad is it's a shared inventory amongst characters. A shared inventory. I mean, it sounds handy for a second. It's like, oh yeah, you know, the stuff that I pick up on Iron Man, I can then use on this. There's only 40 characters, there's only 40 spots here, and about 30 of them are taken up by Iron Man gear that Wolverine can't use. So are you expecting me to go back to the tower every time I want to dump stuff in the stash? If there is a way of remotely dumping stuff, I have not seen it. There's nothing in the store that lets you do that. So I don't really know if there is any way of actually doing that. It doesn't seem like there is, and that's a massive oversight. Questing-wise, it's what I would expect from a game like this, but it's nothing more than that. Now, if I was to describe Marvel Heroes in terms of its gameplay, the kindest thing I'd probably say about it is painfully average. The meanest thing I would say about it is utterly exploitative and reliant entirely on its license. And that is a really nasty thing to say about a game, but unfortunately it seems like it's true right now. there's really not a lot to it that other games don't provide better. Free-to-play games like Path of Exile or games like Torchlight 2 are either $15 or $20. These are titles which offer more interesting questing, more interesting side questing, and less generic enemies. Yeah? You come across all sorts of different stuff, but in this game it's like punk with shield, punk with gun, punk with 2 guns. And it really doesn't make much of a difference, and it becomes this irritating, monotonous kind of gameplay style where you're just killing everything in sight and just getting experience and getting items and leveling up, and that is fun to some people. It's not fun to me. I've never really been a huge fan of this particular genre, but games like Torchlight have really kind of won me over by saying, oh yeah, you can make this fun by just having a really good game and making that combat visceral and putting a real impact in there. One of the other weaknesses that the game actually has is its power system. I showed you a little bit earlier, but this is the entire talent tree for this character. Now, level 60 is the top rank that you can actually have here. And to me, this is just not enough. Now, Torchlight 2 doesn't have huge talent trees either, but 1, they're bigger than this, and 2, every time you hit a 5-level milestone, you get some kind of special function. Here, it's just upgrade the power's damage slightly, yeah? Next rank, if I upgrade Quick Slash, the next rank is just going to increase the physical damage. Does it have a special effect? No. The only cool thing that they really have is this synergy system. So, synergy here. Plus 2.5% damage to all my other basic powers, yeah? If I happen to have this. There's a synergy here. Plus 3% damage per point in I'm the best there is. Stuff like that. So there is a clear set of builds available, but they seem to be extremely limited. And all of the sort of side upgrades that you would get from just getting these skills, most of which... well, it's not fair to say most of them are passive. Most of the Wolverine ones are. Most of the Iron Man ones actually aren't. But there just isn't enough choice, and it seems like it comes down to the fact that they wanted to include as many heroes in the game as possible, and they never spent enough time on each individual one. Now, the Hulk and the Thing seem pretty much clone-ish in the way that they actually act. I mean, that's to be expected, but because they didn't spend enough individual tender loving care on each hero, I don't think it actually does justice to the franchise. And that's a real shame. That's actually a real shame indeed. Something like Marvel, I think, is a very good license, and for the most part, when you make a Marvel game, unless it's just a direct film tie-in, you usually end up with a good experience. Now, there's plenty of good examples of Marvel titles. This, unfortunately, doesn't seem to be one. Now, the game works in a pseudo-MMO style, in the sense that you have these kind of big public areas that support up to about 50 people at once, and you will get these big fights against bosses that appear. I mean, they're mostly just spam fests. There's actually not a lot of strategy involved in them at all. The game definitely gets harder as you go through, but most of it's just, oh, stay out of the things on the ground and spam your attacks until the thing dies, and then pick up your loot. There is individual loot for every person, which is always nice to see, and then when you go into these dungeon areas, they kind of auto-group you with people. So, Scarlet Witch and I think a Hawkeye is in this group with me as well, and they'll help you out, or they'll just ignore you and run around and do whatever. It's nice to be auto-grouped in that respect, and of course you can group up with friends, and that's going to be the big argument that a lot of people most likely will put to me. It's like, oh, it's fun with friends. Everything's fun with friends. I just wish people would stop breaking that out as a reasonable argument, because it really isn't. It's like, if it was a good game, it would be fun regardless, right? Okay. What shall I get in there? I'm just thinking about what to upgrade. Let's get a new skill. Apply that. Drag it in. There we go. I don't actually know what it does, but I'm going to do it anyway. Alright, so it's a sweep. Alright, always nice to know. Full inventory. God. Always the way of things, annoyingly enough. Always the way. All of these dungeons pretty much end up the same kind of thing. It's just kill like 100 or so hoodlums, come across the boss, kill the boss. The boss is probably going to do the same thing as the last boss. When you kill a boss, you get some loot. You also get a medal from that boss, which is a separate equipable item that will give you a special effect. In this case, I've got the Taskmaster medal from defeating Taskmaster, which will give me a chance to reflect bullets. It's a nice, interesting thing, but from a loot standpoint, I think the game is weakened by the fact that you are tied into these canon costumes. Yeah? The only changes you can really make are the little minor visual effects. I can't put a different face mask on Wolverine unless I buy an entirely separate costume. And that's half the joy of loot, right? Am I getting this wrong? Let's say you're a Diablo player. Let me know in the comments section. Am I getting this wrong? The idea that part of the joy of getting loot is to see how badass your character looks when you actually equip it. Is that a thing? I'm pretty sure it's a thing. And that doesn't apply to this game because it doesn't show the loot at all. Maybe it's because you have 20 character classes and it's way too much to do that, but you know, that's kind of the weakness, isn't it? Because you had so many heroes, you couldn't dedicate time to all of them. You couldn't actually give them the attention that they deserved. And as such, getting loot is way, way less joyful in this game. God, it's a good job that I have an absurd amount of experience boosts here. Like, if I wasn't like this, then there would be no way that I could actually actively use this character here. Ooh, that's a blue item. It's always nice. Like, hey, I wonder what that looks like. Just awkwardly drop this, get this. God damn it, I just dropped something. Let me drop it. There we go. I wish there was something to automatically ignore grays or auto-sell all grays or buttons like that, but all of this kind of basic functionality just flat out isn't in the game, and it's what makes me think that this was kind of rushed a little bit. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about it, but I think the combination of the predatory and exploitative business model with fairly generic combat, poor character progression, and unenjoyable repetitive questing really does put this game in a situation where it is carried entirely by its license. And that's not good enough. I'm sorry, it isn't. Path of Exile is just a flat-out better hack-and-slash RPG. Yes, it's got less characters, but they're way, way, way more developed. The skill system's better, the talent system is better, character development's better, itemization is better, the actual difficulty curve is better, the variety in enemies is better. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. If you want to play a free Marvel game, and you happen to like the 5 initial heroes, and you want to play it with friends, you'll probably have a reasonable time of it, but I'm not going to tell you it's a good game because I don't think it is, yeah? It's painfully average at best. A lot of you are most likely going to go try it anyway, and that's cool, but unfortunately it seems like the end game is not particularly good. I've spoken to people that got there, and there's really only a bunch of daily missions that you can do where you can replay other areas on a slightly harder difficulty level. But, I mean, what's the point? I mean, you can't look like an ultimate badass. You can get a bunch of badass items, but to use in what? There isn't a developed endgame to really worry about, so you might as well just go back and play another character and go through the whole rigmarole of leveling the bloody thing up again, which to me is not all that fun. Yeah, I don't think I'll be playing all that much more of Marvel Heroes, unfortunately. It is something of a disappointment, to say the least. I don't know if I really expected too much, but I think the whole notion of having these preset heroes rather than ones you can create yourself and interact with cool guys from the Marvel Universe is fundamentally flawed from its very outset. You look at something like DC Universe, and the situation you have with DC Universe is, oh, create your own hero and you will interact with all of these lovable characters from the DC Universe. And you get much more customization as a direct result. You get more costume options. You can create your own costume, and you can do all sorts of different things there. And then you get the benefit of having all these really cool characters kind of order you around, and they're fully voice acted and things like that. This game doesn't have any of that. Like, there's barely any voice acting in it as it is, aside from the occasional character bark. And it's really not the Marvel experience that I think a lot of fans will be looking for. There are plenty of other options if you're into Marvel, even on PC. Some of the games are a little bit old, but stuff like X-Men Legends and Marvel Ultimate Alliance are, in my opinion, way, way better games than this. Yes, it's free, but really for how long, yeah? What happens when you really want to play Iron Man, or you really want to play Deadpool, and then suddenly the game asks you for $20, and then you figure out, oh, I actually don't like playing this character, and have to spend another $6 to $20 on something. Yeah. Not impressed, I'm afraid. Not impressed. Marvel Heroes currently available on Steam, free-to-play title. Feel free to give it a try. I've said it before, free-to-play games don't have any risk to them, so there's really no reason for you not to at least give it a bash, unless you've been completely put off by what you're looking at here. But I personally will not be playing any more of this, I'm sorry. Also, one more minor annoyance. Crafting particles don't stack. Why do these not stack? It's goddamn terrible. Ugh. So many flaws, so many things to fix. Does it have the potential to be good? Yes. Is it good right now? No. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.